Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent here with Real Property Associates. Just finished up a showing with a client in the Maple Leaf neighborhood and now headed off to a family dinner here shortly, but wanted to take a moment really quick and answer a question that I was actually asked by one of you. And the answer, or I guess the question rather, is how do you choose between an offer? How do you decide which offer is better than another offer? And so this question would be more specifically geared towards a seller, but if you're a buyer, this is also something to pay attention to because this gives you an insight into what a seller is thinking. So the two questions I like to ask, and I like to tell people when they're a seller and they're looking at an offer or choosing, I tell them you want to ask the question of how much money I'm going to get. And this is assuming you want to get the highest price for your house. How much money am I going to get? And then how much assurance do you have that you're going to actually get that money? Those are typically the two burning questions that most sellers have. And so I'll quickly lay the foundation for determining and answering those two questions. So first of all, how much money am I going to get? That's going to come down to the price. So that's going to be the purchase price. That's going to be essentially the biggest part of the offer. How much money is the buyer offering? And I break this down into three things, and now we'll talk about the second part of it is how much assurance do you have. But you've got price, and then you have your terms, and then your conditions or contingencies in the contract. So we've dealt with price already and kind of asked that question, how much money I'm going to get? The rest of it is now going to come down to the contract. So the terms of the contract. When's the closing date? How much earnest money are you going to get? And that's your good faith deposit. If you're not familiar, I've mentioned that in other videos. Are they giving you $5,000 earnest money? Are they giving you $20,000 earnest money? In some places, maybe in Seattle or in a part of Edmonds at a higher price point, maybe we're talking about $30,000, $50,000 of earnest money. But that's usually a pretty big piece of the terms, along with closing date. Those are two of the bigger terms that we'll deal with. There's some other random miscellaneous things we could talk about as far as terms in the contract, but those are the ones I'd want to focus on in this video. The other piece of this is the contingencies, right? I guess you could call those terms, but I like to break them and separate them a little bit. Contingencies are the buts in the contract, the opportunities for a buyer to back out. And the most common contingencies are going to be a financing contingency and then an inspection contingency. The inspection contingency typically gives the buyer 5 to 10 days, sometimes a little bit less, to conduct an inspection after their offer is accepted, and then they are able to either renegotiate some of the price and terms or ask for the seller to do some work, and the other option would be just to back out altogether. The reality in the Seattle area right now is that sometimes buyers are actually doing their inspections ahead of time, and I would say actually a lot of times they're doing their inspections ahead of time, allowing for them to kind of do their due diligence up front and know what they're getting themselves into, but then make a more competitive offer to you as the seller. And the other major contingency is going to be a financing contingency. Now, of course, cash is king. So if the buyer is coming in cash, that's a huge plus. I do find that a lot of cash buyers actually are looking for a deal rather than to make a competitive offer to you as the seller. So that's something to just keep an eye out for. A financed offer, a solid finance offer, is a good offer. So a cash offer $20,000 less isn't necessarily the one you would want to go with. The things that you want to look for in the financing piece, you're going to want to see what type of loan program they have, and you'll want to know if they are pre-underwritten or at least are they pre-approved. You could get a pre-qualification from the bank where they just quickly, you fill out online, yeah, I make about this much, and yeah, I think my credit score is this. That's not a super thorough evaluation, so that's where I make a phone call to the lender and figure out kind of how far along they are in the process. A lot of my buyers are pre-underwritten, meaning the bank's already done all their due diligence on the buyer. They've looked at their W-2s, they've looked at their credit score, they've looked at their bank statements, their job, they know their job history. They know that this person's going to be able to qualify for the house. And so that's a lot more assurance than you would have with somebody that maybe is just kind of at that pre-qualification stage. Other things to consider: down payment, etc., with the financing piece. But the financing part is a huge piece in that assurance. Am I going to get that money or not? You'd hate for a deal to fall through at the last minute because the buyer wasn't able to get their financing all of a sudden. So things to think about are price, how much am I going to get, and then the terms and contingencies. How much assurance am I getting from the buyer that they are going to perform? The thing with the earnest money is typically what you would get if the buyer defaults. So if they were to back out for no reason in the contract, but if the buyer has contingencies like an inspection or a financing contingency, those are opportunities for them to back out in the contract and retain that earnest money. So I hope this was helpful. There's one other piece I want to talk about, and that is when the system structure of it. Typically in those situations, just for making the process simpler, I'll actually put together a spreadsheet. If there's multiple offers for sellers, we can kind of go through the spreadsheet and look into the different offers and kind of compare them side by side. That's more the mechanic of it, but the general idea is price, terms, and contingencies. I hope you found this answer helpful. If you have other real estate questions, I want to be your resource, so please comment below and I'm happy to answer those here soon. Hope you're doing well. Bye for now.